I'm Elizabeth Leach, the School Nutrition Programs Manager at OSSI. And Nigel, I think let's move to the next slide, make sure that works. Yep, it does. Perfect. Here you can see an overview of what we're going to talk about today. We'll start with some introductions, discuss the purpose of today's call, and provide updates on new guidance that has been released. Then we'll spend the majority of our hour diving into how to serve and plan for students to eat meals in the classroom. We'll save about 10 minutes at the end for Q&A and brief recap before we head out. In the interest of time, I'll introduce our speakers for today. You've heard from Nigel and myself already. From OSSI, you will also be hearing from Dave Esquith, Health and Wellness's Director of Policy, and two of our school nutrition program specialists, Alex Dobbs and Kimberly Thompson. Then we'll hear from Kelly Smith, the Director of Operations at Perry Street Prep Public Charter School, and Sebastian Durand, Operations Manager at E.L. Haynes Public Charter Schools. Our goal from the OSSI Nutrition Programs team is to provide timely guidance on how to serve meals when the 2021 school year begins. One way we plan to provide timely information is by hosting a series of biweekly calls, today's being the first. The purpose of these calls is to provide updates and review new guidance that has been shared, respond to questions that have been submitted through our open survey, which Nigel talked about, provide a platform for peer-to-peer sharing of effective practices, and answer questions specific to the call's topic. Each call will focus on a specific content area relevant to serving meals when schools reopen. These content areas are tentatively planned moving forward, but are heavily influenced by the input we receive from you through the open survey. We'll circle back to that survey once more before we head out today. We know that folks are anxiously awaiting updates on what will and won't be allowable in the 2021 school year, and that you probably don't know what reopening schools looks like yet. Students may continue to distance learn, they may be present on alternating days or weeks, or there might be a combination of those. Similarly, you probably don't know exactly how meals, snacks, and other food programs will be served yet. Here, you can see some options of how the 2021 school year might look. As a reminder, current guidance can be found on the OSSI website and will continue to be emailed out each time it is updated. A direct link to this guidance is being put in the chat function now for convenience. The flexibilities that are currently in place have varying expiration dates, including June 30th, August 31st, and September 30th. OSSI will continue to relay updates from USDA regarding these flexibilities as soon as we know of them. While there are many still things undetermined for the 2021 school year, we will focus today's conversation on topics we do know. And with that, I'll hand it over to Dave Esquith, our Director of Policy.
Thank you, Liz, and good morning, everybody. I'm going to give kind of a brief overview on where we are in terms of the policy guidance that both the DC Department of Health and OSSI have put out on kind of reopening of schools related to the COVID-19 recovery period. And my screen just got blocked a little bit. I can't see the I can't see, there's kind of a gray square in the middle of my screen. So I may have to turn this back over to you, Liz, because, oh, there it is. It's gone. Sorry. So there are two buckets in the policy guidance that both DC Health and OSSI have put out. And the two buckets are prevention and response. So what you see in the guidance documents in the bucket under prevention are kind of the actions that schools either must take or should consider taking to protect students and staff and slow the spread of the virus. And it includes a special section on meals. So there's a lot of information in there on kind of how to prevent the things that schools need to do to prevent the spread of the virus. And then there's also kind of a bucket on response. That is the actions that schools must take when a student or staff member becomes sick or exposed to COVID-19 and kind of the protocols that need to be followed. OSSI is implementing a technical assistance plan. That technical assistance plan will include kind of weekly calls. We will piggyback on the child care provider weekly calls that occur on Mondays. And our plan at this point is to have kind of a Monday afternoon call. We will be issuing questions and answers, frequently asked questions and answers, and putting out that publication on a continuous and regular basis as questions come in. And we will provide kind of virtual trainings, kind of doing a deep dive in our weekly calls, just as kind of our wonderful nutrition team is kind of doing a deep dive today on meals in schools. We're on serving meals. We're going to do deep dives on kind of a broader range of topics during our weekly calls. Next slide, please. So kind of here are kind of the key elements in the OSSI school reopening guidance related to meals. And I'm going to go through these one by one. They are all extremely important to preventing the spread of the virus. All adults must wear non-medical face coverings or face masks at all times while in the school building. The guidance allows students to eat lunch and breakfast in their classrooms rather than mixing in the cafeteria. If this isn't possible, then staggering lunch by class and or dividing lunch and recess the area by class is permissible. Lots of information on hygiene. Students must wash hands before and after eating and may not share utensils, cups, or plates. Staff must wash hands before and after preparing the food and after helping children to eat. A lot of information on cleaning and disinfection and sanitization in the guidance. As it relates specifically to meals, tables and chairs must be cleaned and sanitized before and after the meal. And from those of you who might have taken a look at the guidance, you'll know there's a lot of information on social or physical distancing. This applies to meals as well, that whenever feasible, individuals must follow the 6-foot physical or social distancing requirements while serving meals. So lots of challenges related to meals and everything else that goes on in the school. And we're looking forward to helping you kind of implement this guidance. And I'm going to turn it over to Alex now. Alex?
Thanks so much, Dave. All right, hello, everybody. Let's get into our deep dive of eating meals in the classroom. So there are 2 types of serving methods for eating meals in the classroom, either meals delivered directly to the classroom or meals served via the grab-and-go style. These service models also make participation convenient by serving in places where children can easily access the meal, such as in classrooms or hallway kiosks, and limit the extent that students mix with each other and with students from other classes or grades. With all meal service models, it is important to engage administrators, staff, teachers, and parents early in the planning process to ensure success when schools reopen. It is critical that each plan include a healthy cleaning regimen and that proper training is provided to staff and students. It is also important to remember that this is not a one-size-fits-all model. You may decide that you want to serve the lower school via meals delivered to the classroom and the upper school via grab and go, or you may have one campus do all grab and go and another do all delivery. We are going to walk through how each serving style operates and compare the two. As you will see, they operate in a very similar fashion. The location of where students get their meals is the one major difference. So how does eating meals in the classroom work? Eating meals in the classroom is the same as an alternative breakfast serving model, such as breakfast in the classroom, or what we call BIC, or grab and go. So if you are already operating either of these 2 methods, then you are already familiar with how these serving models operate. Meals are prepared in the kitchen or serving area following all current safety rules and regulations that are currently in place. The meals are then packed out and delivered to either the classroom or to the designated area for grab and go. Point of sale or POS is taken, the meals are consumed, and then there's cleanup. So let's take a look at the first step, prepping meals. The meals will be prepped in the normal serving area, ensuring all food service staff are following the current food safety guidelines. As you can see in this chart, the preparation of meals is the same regardless of your serving model. The meals are then packed out into food service bags, which keep hot food hot and cold food cold. Why is this important? Keeping food at the proper temperature is not only food safe, the food tastes better when it's served at the temperature it's intended to be served at. Imagine drinking room temperature milk or eating a room temperature burger. Both taste better when it's served at the proper temperature. The bags also give you freedom in your schedule. The bags hold the temperature of the food so staff can deliver the meals early or pack out a cart early and not have to time it perfectly as to ensure the food does not lose its temperature. You do not have to use a serving bag as long as you're delivering the meals just in time for service, and we'll see another system that works without bags later in this presentation. For both serving methods, ensure that each classroom or cart has all the required meal components. So at lunch, each classroom or cart would need a grain, meat or meat alternate, fruit, vegetable, and 2 types of milk. All right, delivering meals. If serving meals in the classroom, then bags get delivered to each classroom. If a school is using the grab and go option, then the location of the grab and go station should be considered. For grab and go, we often see this done via a food service cart. However, grab and go does not have to be done from a cart. You could have a table set up in a hallway and serve the food from there. You could use a gym or auditorium or even the cafeteria to serve the meals. Grab and go just allows students to pick up meals from a convenient location. Serving the meals. For both methods, the person serving the meals and taking POS needs to know the components of a reimbursable meal. Tables and chairs must be cleaned and sanitized before each meal. A teacher or designated staff member will serve the meals. If meals are delivered to the classroom, we often see teachers serving the meals. If meals are served via grab and go, we often see a food service worker serving the meals, but that's not always the case. The big difference here is that if meals are delivered to the classroom, the students are being served in their classroom and do not leave. If meals are served via grab and go, then students are going to leave their classroom, pick up their meals outside of the classroom, and then return to their classroom to eat. If a school is serving meals from the cafeteria or another potentially high traffic area, then more things need to be considered. Schools should schedule times that classrooms can pick up their food and ensure those times are staggered. For example, classroom A could pick up their meals at 11 and then classroom B picks up their meals at 11:15. Once a classroom goes to pick up their food, they need to follow the guidance that no more than 12 people can be in a room, or 13 if one person is an aide for a student, and ensure that students are let into the cafeteria or serving area following these guidelines. This would ensure that the cafeteria or other serving area does not have more than 12 people in it, as well as ensure there's not a backup, causing a large group to form outside while waiting for their turn to enter. Taking POS. So POS is taken at the time of service. POS can be taken via CP check sheet or roster. It can be done electronically. Each serving line or place meals are served needs to have POS. So if serving meals in the classroom, each classroom should have their own sheet or do their own POS online. If serving meals via grab and go, each location needs to have the ability to take POS. For both serving methods, schools can choose if they want to operate offer versus serve or OVS or serve. Schools notify OSSI if they are doing OVS or serve via their NSLP application. A school is not locked into the serving style for the year, and any changes a school wishes to make just needs to be updated in their NSLP application. Additionally, schools can be OVS for some grades and serve for others. They can be served at breakfast and OVS at lunch. SFAs should consider what's best for their school. Currently, the rules around OVS are the same, in which it is not allowed for preschool, but is mandatory for 9 through 12 lunch. So cleanup works the same for both serving styles. Students discard waste, tables and chairs must be cleaned after the meal, trash cans from classrooms are left in the hallway and collected by custodial staff, and designated kitchen staff bring supplies back to the kitchen. So here are some additional resources to help schools with eating meals in the classroom. The first guide on this list is a FRAC one-page reopening guide on serving meals in the classroom. The next resource is from SNA, and that's a little more in depth when thinking about serving meals in school reopening. This is an especially good resource for our self-prep schools. OSSE has a collection of resources for schools to use to implement an alternative breakfast serving model. OSSE also has a guide to help schools navigate through these resources. There are numerous resources and toolkits that can help schools, especially schools that are new to serving meals in the classroom. Everything that is here for breakfast is the same for lunch. For example, breakfast in the classroom operates the exact same way as lunch in the classroom. So school nutrition staff, administrators, teachers, and custodians should collaborate and use breakfast after the bell practices to evaluate models and develop a revised plan to serve breakfast and a lunch in a way that supports access. Think about what's best for your school. Remember, it does not have to be an all or nothing model. So we're going to hear from two SFAs now. Our first SFA, Perry Street Prep, serves breakfast in the classroom from grab and go carts, which is an easy and adaptive way to serve the meals. Then we'll hear from E.L. Haynes. They have been serving both breakfast and lunch in the classroom for their elementary school for years. So everyone, let me introduce Kelly Smith. She's the Director of Operations at Perry Street Prep. And Kelly, I'll turn it to you now.
Thanks, Alex. Happy to be here and talk with you guys. We obviously haven't figured out everything for next year, but we're happy to share about what we've been doing at Perry Street. Just to give you a little information, we are a pre-K 3 to 8th grade school. We're Title I, and we utilize the community eligibility provision. For us, that just means that all students are eligible for a free breakfast and lunch every day, in addition to the other meals we serve during after school. If you click over for me, I just want to share a little bit about the why. It obviously was not COVID-19 era when we made this change, but in 2016, we were trying to solve a variety of problems, which led us to this conclusion. We were looking for more instructional time, and we were trying to reduce student transitions. Our cafeteria culture was just chaotic. It was loud. We were having behavior issues, and our students were like noticeably hungry and irritable. After meal times, they would come back and say they were still hungry. So we had to come up with a lot of solutions that were very diverse and wide-reaching. Classroom meals did not solve all those problems, but they were one aspect, and that was transitioning to serving at least breakfast initially in the classroom. So this past school year, just to give people an overview, we served 405 pre-K to 8th grade students breakfast in their classroom every day. And when I say serve, it means they ate in their classroom, but the service kind of came in a variety of ways that I'll share next in our logistics slide. And for lunch, we had 80 pre-K students who ate in a small environment, and next year will be classrooms. We had 300 students eat cafeteria lunch with staggered lunch periods, and we had 20 to 30 students who actually got their lunch in the cafeteria and then brought it back up to their classrooms. And this actually happened after just a lot of success teachers saw in the breakfast model. They realized it was just a much nicer, more structured environment for students to eat lunch in as well. So if you click over for me, I'll talk a little bit just about the logistics of how we made it work. In the event that it could be helpful to anyone. A lot of it is, like Alex is saying, pretty straightforward. We had our cafeteria staff, which is a food service management company employees, would pack our carts every morning. They would have to do this by 7:45. They'd have all the meals separated and packed into heat or cool bags. They would make sure that the carts were stocked as well with whatever was needed. Many things could stay on it overnight. The teacher would then come down and pick up the cart. So we did about one cart for every 3 classrooms. We initially had done one bag for every classroom, and we just found that it didn't help us manage waste, and it was very laborious. So this kind of helped us cut by, a third or 2/3 of the work that we were doing to separate. Our teachers rotate who takes responsibility for getting this cart. Some grade bands decide that one teacher does it the whole school year. Others change weekly. Others have an aide who takes on this role. So we had to leave some flexibility there. Our students then are let in the building at 8 o'clock unless they're in before care, which then they're released from before care at 8 o'clock, and sanitize their hands, and they take food off the cart, or in some cases in our lower grades, the teachers have prepped their desks with that food. So that was a big learning point for us, was that we just had to give our classrooms at different age levels flexibility to, in compliant ways, serve these meals however it worked best for their students. Our teachers do our tallies at the point of service. I'll tell you a little bit about how we do that on the next slide. And then the commitment our teachers made clear that they needed was knowing when the meals would be removed and when the trash would be removed. So we finish breakfast officially at 8:30, and our commitment to teachers is that at the latest by 9:30, which it always happens sooner, but at 9:30 their trash would be removed and the food would be removed from the hallway. And then after the meal, students are responsible for wiping down their workspace before they start classwork. And next year we'll have to transition to that be a pre-meal wipe down of workspace as well, but it ended up being a pretty easy process for us. So if you click over to the next one, what we needed, we realized quickly we needed to purchase the way we were going to transport these things. At first we had bags that were hard to carry. We needed carts, so we did carts. We had our food service management company provide our warm, cool bags at no extra cost to our contract. We created our 10 tally binders. So every cart then needed a binder where we retained those tally records. They needed a box of gloves, hand sanitizer. We needed 40 large class trash cans. We needed trash cans that were just for this purpose so that teachers knew they would be cleaned, students knew where to put food, and we could really, in a hygienic way, manage our classroom spaces. Lots of disinfectant wipes and a willingness from staff. So I don't want to underscore that this is a big transition. While some schools, I have to acknowledge, have been doing this for years, right? Especially some of our younger students have always ate meals in their classrooms. For us, it was getting our middle school staff on board. But once we kind of started unraveling the why, which for us was, now you don't have breakfast duty. You get to be in your classroom while your kids are eating and either working with them or talking with them. But it transitions just a lot of the operations in really positive ways for us. I'll let that segue into my next slide, which was lots of unexpected outcomes. So I only share this to help people kind of get excited at the opportunities this shift creates for us, because a lot of us have been doing this the same way for a long time. And when we made the change, we didn't anticipate all the positive things that would come out of it. One was just increased meal participation. So we knew that we really wanted to get more kids eating. And that's what happened when they were in these smaller environments. They had less distraction. It wasn't as noisy. And they had their classroom teacher who knows them say, "You're always hungry at 10. Make sure you eat breakfast now." We had more meal flexibility for tardy students, so we allow students to continue to get food off those carts until they disappear, right? And if a teacher frequently knows we have habitually tardy students, they grab that meal ahead of time, they bring it into the classroom. If the student comes to eat it, then they can tally it at that time. But teachers know pretty well who's coming and when they're coming. It actually really increased our cleanliness and hygiene practices. I think that's something that we previously always just were like, oh, the nighttime cleaning crew takes care of cleaning the classrooms, and there was a little less buy-in or kind of skin in the game in terms of keeping our environments clean. But this helped everybody, teachers, staff, and children really realize that, like, in order to have a safe space to eat a meal, they really all had to make sure they were doing some better practices in the classroom. Most important to our teachers, it increased our instructional time. There was just so much less lost time from transitions. There was the opportunity, which you can see in these pictures, this was why I shared them, for students to be eating breakfast, like the top left, and then right behind him is the little girl you see in the bottom right, and she is doing some morning work. So she finished her breakfast early, or she had come having already eaten breakfast. So he has that time. He's not missing out in the event the class has even already started and hearing that instruction. But what we don't have are kids just waiting around, which we did when we ate in the cafeteria. We have more opportunities to build community. Teachers love the environment that happens in the morning. Alex came for our admin review this year, and we were laughing that it's like the happiest time of day in our school is breakfast from 8 to 8:30. Teachers are just enjoying quality time with students in a less structured way, and sharing a meal turns out really is nice for people. It reduced behavior incidences. We had the opportunity to provide some student leadership opportunities for students who wanted to get those carts or do a part of meal service. And it just helped us invest in caring for, helping students care for their learning environment. That's a practice I know is pervasive in Montessori communities and in other progressive models, but just is not typically in traditional school models like ours. And it was a big shift that we didn't anticipate kids adopting so easily within the classroom, but it was great. So that's it for me. I'm happy to answer questions at the end or share my contact information. We obviously had bumps along the road, but we're actually really excited to transition all of our meal service now to classrooms.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kelly. And of course, as Kelly said, we'll take some questions at the end. But right now we're going to hear from Sebastian. He is the operations manager at E.L. Haynes Public Charter School.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. I hope everybody is healthy at home. For E.L. Haynes, I'm going to focus particularly on our lunch service, which happens in the classroom. I'll talk about food travel from delivery through to the students, the main tools we are using, and how we work with the staff and the expectations that we set throughout the organization. So for E.L. Haynes, our elementary school is 360 students. We serve over 4,000 meals a week, not including the snacks. Breakfast is grab and go, lunch is in the classroom. We have approximately 70% of students free and reduced. So we are not a CEP school. And at E.L. Haynes, we have 3 campuses: elementary school through 4th grade, middle school 5th through 8th, and high school 9th through 12. All the schools will eventually transfer to either grab and go or classroom meals service. And each campus has a food service coordinator who is responsible, obviously, for the entire distribution, and backed up by a operations manager. And we use our facility staff as substitutes when we have absences. So the whole team is trained accordingly. So to give a little bit of context for E.L. Haynes, what we wanted is, beyond feeding the kids, is really providing a time for students to use, to create connections, meaningful connections between each other during lunch. So the entire time is not just about serving food, but it's also about creating some activities and positive atmosphere in which students can actually enjoy each other and their food. They are also involved in normal circumstances. They're also involved in all the tasks and soft skills that comes with that. So food travel, next slide, please. From the time the food is delivered, in our case is Revolution Food or Caterer right now, to when the food is served to the students, ideally only 2 adults are handling the food. Our food is delivered pre-packaged and individually packaged, including the utensils. So our food service coordinators just receive the deliveries, check everything, the paperwork and the temperatures, and start distributing those meals per classrooms into bins. So we use bins because they are more rigid than a bag. Alex was talking about how important packaging was to distribute those meals, particularly around keeping temperatures consistent as possible. So we use bins because they're easy to load and also to stack on top. So when we distribute them with the cart, we can carry quite a lot at one time. Each container lists all the meals requested by each teacher in the beginning of the day, and I'll explain a little bit more about that later. And all the components of the meals, including options for meals and the utensils. And when they are ready, containers are delivered directly to the classroom via carts, no more than 30 minutes, usually 5 to 10 minutes before lunchtime, into the hallway. And then its service and is taken over by the teacher. Next slide, please. Yes. So teachers grabbed the bin and start serving meals on setup. Again, on a normal day, teachers usually assign a couple of students who are the helpers and responsible for lunchtime. They set up all the components in front of each student who requested a lunch. And as they do so, the teacher opens computer and starts recording the meals and tallying it. The point of sale happens there. And we do all this through our student information system, which I will talk a little bit more about it in a few minutes, but it's really important that this happens as the student eat. And at the end of lunchtime, there is always 5 minutes of quiet time in which students who are slow eaters can really focus on eating and finishing their meals, while others start cleaning up and transitioning and resetting for the afternoon activities. So the tools that we use, I'm going to talk a little bit about our student information system, because this has been our best asset by far. Infinite Campus is a database that is one place where everything happens. Every single program at school is in Infinite Campus, from attendance to behavior, report cards, enrollment. Right now, we are enrolling students, and everything is through our student information system. The free and reduced application portal is through there as well. I manage that. And because it's one point, everything happens live. So for example, if in the morning, a teacher takes attendance before 9 a.m. and during that time, they also list the students who request a lunch. By 10 a.m., the food service coordinator can pull his report and know exactly how many meals are needed for each classroom. That allows us to be pretty efficient, and it's extremely easy for me at the end of each month to pull all the data via ID check and prep my claims for submission. It's the same for free and reduced application meals. Those free and reduced applications come to me at any time during the day. I process them, and it automatically updates the data, and nobody else see it, just the system. Everything is built in, all the compliance is built in, which makes it very easy and convenient to work with. So again, during service, this is great. During service, teachers simply have to open their laptop and log into what we call the meal serve, and they just record in the system which student receives a full compliant meal. So the best tool is for us our SIS. Beyond the usual physical equipment that we use, like the bins, the gloves, the cleaning equipment, etc., I think the key component into this system is really communication between all the actors of meal service, from teachers to the food service coordinators, but also the front office team. For example, if we have a late student that arrives after attendance has been taken, it is imperative for the receptionist to not only give the pass to the student, but also ask if that student needs a meal and communicate that information to the coordinators. So by lunch, everything is up to go and ready to go, and we minimize waste on one end, and we are more effective on avoid the back and forth between classrooms and kitchen. So this brings us to a lot of training that needs to take place and a lot of people that are involved into those trainings. We use our summer orientation trainings to take the time to train everyone, all the teachers, including those who are not necessarily who do not necessarily have in their normal schedule a lunch duty. And simply because when we have absences, we ask that we always cover for each other. And I really need everyone to know how meal service works, on what it entails, on the compliance behind it. So when we are on a pinch or somebody is absent, somebody else can jump in and knows exactly what to do. And that requires a training into our student information system, Infinite Campus, and also into all the details of compliance. So I use a lot of the resources that we received during the summer during our mandatory training at RC. And I use those slides and go over a lot of that information with the entire team. And that includes also, obviously, sanitation and hygiene around food safety. So now what? That is the huge question. If somebody knows, please let me know, because I would like to know. Everybody does. At EL Haynes, we are still investigating our options. We have yet to figure out exactly how schedule is going to look like and how our calendar is going to look like. What we know is that we are seriously considering the grab and go option for our upper levels. Makes it very convenient, having only very few students at the time to pick up in line their meals and go eat in their room, knowing that each room will follow the requirements that came up via CDC, the less than 10 students per room or 10 adults per room, the physical social distancing, etc., etc. We are making a point of being very, very, very focused on safety, sanitation, and adaptability. We're going to really try to drill this into everybody's mind that we all have to adapt to a new reality and that it will take a lot of care on patience and kindness for all of this. So ideally, what we would love is to be able to create a service that works well for those students who are going to show up and be in the building, but also being able to figure out a way to serve meals to those who are not in the building. And we have yet to figure out how that could happen. And that's it for me.
Thanks so much, Sebastian. All right, so it looks like we have about 10 or so minutes for a Q&A. So if you have any questions related to serving meals in the classroom, feel free to just chat it. It can be for Asi, it can be for Sebastian, it can be for Kelly. If you have any questions that are related to school opening that are not serving meals in the classroom, feel free to put it into the open survey that Kimberly chatted earlier. We're going to be gathering those and doing some more sessions later. So these ones are just for serving meals in the classroom.
Hello, this is Kimberly. So I'm going to start with the first question in the chat from Katie Nash with DC Central Kitchen. Do meals have to be served unitized, or can they be sent to the classroom or on the grab-and-go cart in bulk and portioned and served by designated staff?
All right, thank you, Katie, for that one. Okay, so current guidance says that packages need to be prepackaged lunches, including silverware, napkins, and seasonings, or serve meals individually plated. So I don't know, Dave, if you want to elaborate on that.
Sure, Alex. So I want to make sure I understand the question. I think there are a couple of important principles at play here. is that however you do this, kind of consistent with the USDA rules, what you want to do is minimize the extent to which there is kind of interaction and movement between classes and between individuals, and that if there is interaction between individuals, the 6-foot distancing rule must be adhered to the maximum extent possible. So, you know, the principle here is minimal movement around the school, staying in the classroom, everyone, students and teachers, staying in a classroom to the maximum extent possible during the day, and minimal interaction between individuals across the school with the social distancing requirement maintained. So I hope that answers the question without getting into specifics.
I popped on in case it's helpful, but Alex, you know, we did both. We didn't serve unitized meals at Perry Street from our carts. We served bulk, so students would have to take all the components from the meal if students were retrieving it in the older grades, or if teachers decided that they wanted to pre-plate them, they did that. They wore gloves, they had to get a serving utensil that was, you know, on the cart for the appropriate size, and they served out those meals. So we were not doing unitized meals from the carts.
Thanks for that, Kelly. And I'll just add, I think in the current situation, the latter model you talked about where the teacher was serving rather than the students taking would be the preferable and safer method there.
Our next question is from Danielle at Mundo Verde. It's a follow-up to Katie's. If meals are on the cart in bulk and portions in the classroom, can the point of service be taken in the classroom, or does it need to be taken by the staff serving the meal on the cart?
Okay, great question. So POS should be taken when the student receives a meal. So if the student is receiving a meal from the cart, it should be taken there. If the meals are getting plated on the cart, brought into the classroom and serve students in the classroom, it should be taken in the classroom. So you want to take POS once you see a student has taken a reimbursable meal.
And then our next question is from Cheryl with Paul Public Charter School. Does high school students have to operate under offer versus serve?
So I specifically mentioned this since Aussie has gotten a lot of questions on if 9 through 12 still has to be offer versus serve. Current guidance is yes. We did pose a question to USDA. We're waiting on a lot of guidance to come out from USDA. So if we hear anything different, if that's been waived, we will let you guys know. So just I'm going to plug Beyond the Tray also to be sure to be reading that. And then we will send out updated guidance with waivers as we typically do in our Q&A.
Here we have another question from Kelly with Rocket Ship. For the breakfast serving model for serve, under serve, if we were to put all components or items on the student's desk before they arrive, how should the SFA take point of service?
Yeah, so we see this a lot in schools that the components are put on a desk for them. So what you want to do is you want to take POS when the student sits down at the desk. So them sitting down is them taking a meal. The issue is if you set out, let's say 10 meals and you took POS right then, if someone's absent that day, then you've taken POS for a student that wasn't in school that day.
Our next question's from Tiffany with Cesar Chavez. Will teachers have an SLP training from Aussie if the school decides to serve in the classroom?
So we will not have a teacher-specific training from OSSI, but what we do have are slides, a training on offer versus serve. And it was really similar to last year's SLP training. I actually linked it in this presentation and called out the slide. So if you want to use that to train your teachers, I've seen a lot of people do like during a teacher meeting or do a separate session on training teachers on what's a reimbursable meal and how do they take POS. Those are the two main things that they need to know. So in the resource section on here, there's some slides that are linked, a presentation that's linked with the exact slide numbers that SFAs can use if you need help training your teachers.
Okay, we have another question from Katie. It was mentioned earlier the ability to have a grab-and-go cart located in the cafeteria. Could this be the regular service line, or does this need to be on a separate cart from the regular service line?
Yeah, so I didn't mean to say that. I probably misspoke. It can be your service line in the cafeteria. It doesn't have to be on a cart. Grab and go is most often seen on a cart, but I've seen it on tables. I've seen it on a desk in a classroom. I've seen it, you know, in the teacher's lounge. It can be anywhere, and it definitely can be on the serving line.
Okay, there's another question, a follow-up to Katie's question. If an SFA wanted to continue serving in the cafeteria and divide up the space to keep cohorts or small groups of students together, do we need to have floor to ceiling dividers or air walls, or would portable room dividers be considered sufficient?
So if you don't mind, Dave and Liz, I'm going to kick this question over to you all.
Yeah, thank you. This is a really important question. And I think it's important to recognize that at this time, the Department of Health has said that there can be no more than 12 individuals, including staff in a room and including the cafeteria. The Department of Health is not allowing kind of dividers to be set up in open spaces to allow for more than 12 individuals in that space. It's very important to appreciate that. I will be very surprised. So kind of the concept here that the Department of Health is kind of articulating is this vision that students are essentially in their classroom for all of the day to the maximum extent possible. So this idea that a cafeteria or a large space like an auditorium or a gym can be used for more than 12 people is not being permitted by the Department of Health this time. And this is why this particular presentation is so important, is that when you put together the requirements on social distancing, as well as the requirement of the maximum number of people in any space, regardless of the square footage, you will kind of come to the conclusion that meals have to be served in the classroom with a minimum amount of interaction with people outside of that classroom throughout the school day.
Great. It looks like a few people have virtually raised their hand. You can come off mute and ask your question, or you can type it in the chat feed.
And I know we have only a couple minutes left, so Kimberly, why don't you share the last question I see in the feed, and then we'll transition to next steps.
Great. All right, and the next question is from Munda Verde again. If an SFA is using the serving line as a grab-and-go spot, does the kitchen staff count as part of the 12 people allowed in the room? So if 4 staff, for example, including 8 students, could come through the line at once, is that allowable?
Any individual who's in that room counts towards the 12. There is kind of an allowance for a 13th person briefly, but the vision there is that if a student with a disability may need an aide to assist them briefly, they're allowing 13 people in, but it's 12 people in a room, regardless of who the people are, whether they're students or staff or faculty. The maximum number of persons in a room at any one time is 12.
Thanks for that clarification, and thank you all for your questions. We know this isn't an easy topic, and so in the brief amount of time we have left, I just want to share what's up and coming next. As Dave discussed, OSSE's policy guidance for the reopening of schools has been released, and there will be additional trainings and calls over the summer specific to that guidance. Additionally, specific to school nutrition programs, we plan to release guidance specific to food service worker safety and meals. As I touched on earlier, we communicate with you all in a number of ways. If you haven't already provided input in our survey, as Nigel, Alex, and Alex discussed, please continue to do so. We will keep that survey open as long as necessary, and we will determine the calls for each of the topics for each of these calls based on what we hear from you in that survey. I'm happy to announce that our next call is scheduled for July 9th. And the topic will be focused on serving meals for students that are distance learning. As a reminder, information will continue to be emailed out when it's high priority. It will be released in our Beyond the Train newsletter and will continue to be available on the OSSE website. Our National School Lunch Program training this year, which is July 28th and 30th, will focus on the nuances of serving meals for the 2021 school year. And as always, please reach out to any of our team members for technical assistance. We have our names on the following slide, and I know Kelly and Sebastian have offered to put their information in the chat now and answer questions and be a collaborative source if you need as well. I want to extend thanks particularly to Kelly and Sebastian for sharing their expertise with us today, and for all of you for joining us. We very much look forward to seeing you again on July 9th in our next call. Thank you so much.